Your Partner in Success Radio is a free business podcast with host Denise Griffitts. It's all about great stories, conversation, and context to help you move your business and life forward with actionable tips and advice from her guest experts. To listen and subscribe, just find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your podcasts.
Morning and welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio. I am your host, Denise Griffitts, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today. This podcast is ranked in the top 2% of the most popular podcasts globally, and that is all thanks to my really incredible guest. In today's episode, we are diving into the inspiring journey of Scott Shute, a visionary leader who has dedicated his career to transforming the workplace through mindfulness and compassion. With over 20 years of experience in the tech industry, Scott made his mark as Vice President of Customer Operations at LinkedIn. However, it was his groundbreaking role as head of mindfulness and compassion programs that truly set him apart, where he championed the integration of well-being into corporate culture. Now, in 2022, Scott took his mission even further by founding Changing Work, which is an organization committing to curating and sharing best practices for conscious business, and we need that. We really do. As a keynote speaker, executive coach, and author of the award-winning book, I can't talk today, Scott, I'm sorry, The Full Body, yes, it's a Monday. Scott is on a quest to help individuals and organizations align with their core values and create high-performing environments that foster joy and inspiration. Write that down. Nobody wants to go to work and go, I don't want to be here. So join us today as we explore his personal journey into mindfulness, how he began his contemplation practice at just 13 years old, and his vision for a future where work is not just about productivity, but also about nurturing the human spirit. That is so important. Scott, good morning. Welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio, and thank you for sending your book, The Full Body Yes, to me. It's in front of me as we speak.
Well, good morning. Thanks so much for having me. Hi, everybody.
It's a pleasure, and I love the book. I've already read it, reviewed it. I've got sticky notes all over it.
That's great.
Listen, as a kid, the librarian, because we lived in the library in the summertime, and my mom said, do not mark books. I still refuse to mark up books, so sticky notes it is. But Scott, before we dive in, can you share a bit about yourself and how you like to show up in the world?
Oh, thank you for asking that. Well, let's see. Things I love to do. I love to do landscape photography. I love to travel with my family. And so we're on a quest to visit all the national parks in the US and lots of the beautiful places in the world. I love to be on anything two wheels. So I mountain bike and road bike and grew up on a farm with motorcycles. And how do I love to show up in the world? One of my favorite quotes, I forget where I got it, but honestly, I kind of adopted it as my own, is our job is not to rail against the darkness, but to be farmers of the light. And so I'm just trying to focus on the things that are positive because, we have enough of the negative. That doesn't need any more help today.
Yeah, it's getting worse by the moment. It seems like, do me a favor and repeat that. I'm having trouble talking today.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, right. I was trying to say something, it was only 3 words this morning, and I bit my tongue. I couldn't do it. So it's like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to get through this podcast. I'm going to enjoy it, and then I'm going to go sit down and look at the ceiling fan for a while. Apparently, I
Oh,
need a
that's great.
break, and it's very early in the morning already. But repeat that for me if you would, because I'm
Sure.
writing that down.
Here we go. Our job is not to rail against the darkness, but to be farmers of the light.
Absolutely love that. So, Scott, tell us about your 20-year journey in the tech industry. You went from farming or, being a
Yeah,
farmer's son to the tech industry. And how did that lead to your role as vice president of customer operations at LinkedIn?
sure.
I'm sensing a story there.
There may be a little well, maybe. So I grew up on a farm in Kansas, a very rural kind of industrial, wheat and corn, soybeans, cattle type of farm. Um, and my oldest brother got an engineering degree, and that seemed like a good way to not be a farmer. Because while I appreciated being outside and the connection with the land, it just wasn't for me. And so I got my engineering degree and I made my way to Silicon Valley over time. Um, and, over the course of 25 or 30 years, I found myself at LinkedIn. But along the way, it just never quite felt exactly right. And I'll back up. There was a time when I was about 18 and I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. And this was in the 80s, and I don't know if people remember the movie Wall Street and the character Greed is Good, or sorry, Gordon Gekko, whose motto was Greed is Good. And I was thinking this is what corporate America is like, just this kind of darkness. And I was in contemplation one day. I had started a contemplation practice when I was a kid. And so here I am, I'm 18, and it felt like I was at this T junction and there was a black or white path. And the black path in my 18-year-old mind was to get my engineering degree, and go down that way. But the other path was to go this other direction and maybe follow my spiritual bliss. Maybe, I like music, I'm a singer. Maybe go to New York and try to make it as a singer, whatever. So I'm in contemplation, kind of virtually throwing up my hands, saying, what am I supposed to do here? What's my mission? And in that quiet, I got an answer that kind of came with a knowingness. And that knowingness said, well, maybe you can change work from the inside out. All right, I'm 18 years old. What am I supposed to do with that? So I
Listen
kind
to
of tuck,
it. I call those God winks.
yeah, exactly. So I kind of tuck that away. I get my engineering degree, and I go through a series of jobs that I mostly liked, but it still didn't quite feel like it, you know, until I was at LinkedIn, and then I had a chance to do something, a little more, a little more close to home. So, if you want me to tell that story, I can, but that's kind of how I got
It's in my
to
notes. Tell
Silicon
that
Valley.
story because, listen, so many of us, particularly the audience for this particular podcast, because this is largely a business podcast, we're all on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of where we live. It's business to business. That's where we communicate with one another. So yeah, definitely tell that story. But I was kind of laughing a little bit when you said, you had this, I'm calling it a God wink, but that happens to me in the shower.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does because, you're not disrupted by anything. The phone
That's
may
right.
be ringing. You don't care. You're relaxed. And all of a sudden, listen, I got to the point, you're going to think I'm a lunatic, but when I know I'm going to go in the shower, because I stay in there, I try to run the hot water heater out. I've never managed it. It's a big one. And I take my showers hot enough to steam broccoli. So it's, when I get out of there, I'm walking into fog, but I take bathtub crayons in there with me because I get
Nice.
these downloads and spirit downloads, ego downloads. I can tell the difference between the two. And I start getting all these downloads the longer I'm in there, and I have to scribble them on the walls,
That's
the
great.
stall wall, because if I don't, they're gone.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And this is what happens to us because our lives are usually so busy and distracted that we're disconnected from that deepest part of ourself, kind of that direct, that hotline, if you would. But when we're in the shower or when we're fishing and it's quiet or when we're taking a walk and we're not thinking about work or when we're in contemplation or prayer or whatever it is, those are all ways in, ways in to make that connection. So good for you for making it alive. Because here's the other thing that you're doing that's great is that you're setting an intention that you're open to it by taking the crayons or the markers or the notebook or the journal or whatever. You're saying, hey, I'm open to receiving. Um, and that allows
Right.
for the flow to happen even stronger.
And
So
you said
good on
something important too, and I scribble a lot while I'm chatting with you because there's always something I'll go back and go, oh, I need to go back and listen to that part. But you're talking about contemplation.
you.
And I
Mm.
actually had a guest not so long ago who was he was the first silent TED Talk speaker. He spent about 300 and some odd days in contemplation and silence. And I
Wow.
actually joined him on a Zoom call this weekend at 5 o'clock in the morning for a meditation. And I'm not good at meditating. I'm
Mm.
not. I've got a squirrel brain. I know it. I deal with
Mm,
it. But it was amazing. But when you said contemplation,
yeah,
I do something very similar, but what I do is when I know that I'm just about to fall asleep for the actual time because I don't sleeping is not a skill for me.
uh-huh,
It's not something I've ever done well at. And just about the time I think, oh, I'm going to make it. I'm going to go to sleep. I literally will say out loud, and you mentioned prayer. I'm saying my prayers. Can I say it out loud? Because I don't know who's listening. Somebody's listening.
sure,
And I will turn whatever question or concern or something is worrying me, and I will literally turn it over to my subconscious for
yeah,
review. And Scott, I'm telling you, I may go to sleep at 1 a.m., but at 3:18 I wake up and go, oh, there it is.
yeah,
And I write it down. Or
that's
I go
right.
make a gumbo. Just depends on what I feel like doing. I'm not entirely sane, just so you know.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I make a distinction, and this is splitting hairs for some people, but I make a distinction between contemplation and meditation. And for,
Yeah,
this is where
because
we're
yeah,
in a world where it means different things to different people. But for me, what it means, there are forms of meditation where it's the idea is to just get quiet, right? Just to still the mind and then kind of see what happens. For me, contemplation is looks a lot like from the outside like a meditation.
okay.
Except for me, I'm directly trying to make contact with whatever the thing is, whatever you want to call it, our subconscious or the divine or God or Jesus or whatever we want to say. But
All of
when
the
we're
above, as far as I'm concerned.
exactly all of the above, but when we're actively trying to make that connection, there's something powerful that happens, at least for me, and I know for other people as well.
Stop now.
Yeah,
Where,
like
where'd you
now.
go? Yeah, don't stop now. Keep going. Tell.
Oh,
I was writing down notes to go, he quit. He left. What happened?
okay. Well, let me transition into what happened at LinkedIn. I think that's that's central to our story here because
It
I thought we
is.
were just going to do a contemplation and be quiet. That's where I thought we were headed.
Oh,
No,
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 when
no.
I
All
I
good.
don't okay,
Okay, so
LinkedIn, let's go there.
let's go there. So I found myself at LinkedIn. This is, more than 10 years ago. I was there in the early days. When I first started, there was 1,500 people maybe, and I was there for about a decade. I left a few years ago, and now there's almost 20,000 people at LinkedIn. It grew incredibly quickly while I was there. But about a year into it, I realized, wow, this is a different place because our CEO was talking about his own practice. He was using Headspace, the meditation app Headspace. And he was talking about contemplation. And I thought, wow, this is wild. Maybe this is a place where I can bring really that true part of myself and maybe lead a meditation or something like that at work, which I did. And the pre-story to that is I met with my friend who's in charge of wellness, and we were talking about something else. And I was saying, hey, do we do anything with meditation here? And he started to say, well, we used to, but, and then he sees this look in my eyes. He goes, wait a minute, do you do something? I'm like, yeah, I could do something. And he got excited and I got excited because I was a VP. And so here's the head of wellness saying, hey, I could get a VP to lead a wellness program. That would be awesome. And I was thinking, well, I can be my true full self at work. That would be awesome. And I got really excited and I went back to my desk and I didn't do anything about it for 2 or 3 months because I was terrified. I mean, on the one hand, this was my
I
identity.
was going to ask you, did you stall yourself out? Let's call it imposter syndrome or straight out fear. I wondered if that's what happened.
Yeah, not imposter syndrome because I'm a confident guy. That's not the that wasn't the problem. The problem was fear. Especially what I was worried about is what are my peers? What are the other VPs? What are the senior people going to think of me? What is my team? I was leading a big team at work. What are they going to think of me? That's where it was coming from. Because I had never talked about this at work. I had never outed myself as a meditator or as a spiritual person. That part had always been very protected. So I finally got the courage to do it. The first one was um, in this room that was called Heavenly. That was the name of the conference room, which I thought was quite auspicious. 4:30 on a Thursday, led a meditation. And that first time, there was one dude there. And I'm sure that he was just as terrified as I was because I never saw that
Oh,
guy again.
oh.
Yeah. But the next week there were three, and the next week there were five, and then it became a regular thing, and we had a little posse, and then volunteers came that were excited about it, and it grew and grew and grew. And then I would get invited to lead bigger things. So as an example, the CFO would have an offsite with 400 or 500 people and invite me to kick it off with a 10-minute meditation. Like, think about that. Here's this big public company with 500 finance people meditating before their 2-day offsite. And then it just, snowballed. And over time, I became more comfortable. It became really my true identity. I got to be really myself at work. It's funny, people would ask, like, when did you become this meditation guy? I'm like, no, this is who I've always been. It's just now I get to be this person publicly as well. And then
You're
our
sharing
CEO,
that because so
yeah,
many people who come on this show, I think we're a spiritual, I think human beings tend to be fairly spiritual in one way or
hmm,
another. But until recently, the last year or two, nobody really talked about it. People
yeah,
are much more open to sharing. Like for me, if you would have asked me 5 years ago if I was spiritual, I would say, why do you want to know?
yeah,
I
right,
held it very close to my chest.
right,
Okay,
right.
keep going.
Okay, so I forget what year, maybe 2017 or 18, our CEO gave the commencement address at Wharton, right? Very buttoned down Wharton. He's an alumni there. And he talked about compassion, right? You get 17 minutes in a commencement address to give your one big piece of advice. His big piece of advice was be compassionate. If you want to be successful at work, be compassionate. You want to be successful in your life, be compassionate. That's awesome. And that was pretty brave to do that at Wharton. Next day, he's on Good Morning America, and this is all the reporters want to talk about. They have one softball question about LinkedIn, and all the other discussion is about compassion at work. And I was thinking, that is amazing. So in that moment, I had been in my operations role for 6 years. I was definitely ready to do something else. I'd been volunteering, doing the mindfulness thing for 3 years probably. And I made a proposition to him. I'm like, hey man, you just told all of our employees that compassion was the most important thing that they could do via this commencement address, but we're not doing anything about it. So I'm an ops guy. How about I can operationalize compassion? I can mainstream mindfulness. I can put these things into practice at LinkedIn. And so you might imagine that was hard to say no to. So together we created this role, and I was the head of mindfulness and compassion programs. And we went from there.
I'm fascinated by this. I'm actually getting, you know, pictures in my head of people walking in and going, what? What are we
Uh-huh.
doing here? But I'm also getting those kind of instant pictures going, oh man, I'm so ready. I need a break. Help me.
Uh-huh. That's right.
So I'm guessing it was somewhere in between the two or, kind of
Yeah,
seesawed between
we
the two.
we definitely wanted to meet people wherever they were in their journey. And so we tried to offer something for everybody wherever they were in their journey. So if we split the two, mindfulness, compassion, because they're two different things. For me, mindfulness is the thing that happens when you close your eyes in your own practice. But it's the goal of, well, my definition for mindfulness is basically seeing it all, seeing everything in a 360-degree view without judgment. Okay, so for some people, that's a workshop where we talk about mindset, right? And the stories we tell ourselves. For some people, that's meditation and a little bit everything in between. So, as an example, we got everybody access to an app. We started with Headspace, but we eventually transitioned to a different app called Wise at Work because it was for people at work. And every year, every October-ish, we would do a 30-day challenge using the app. And the goal was we would have, time at the company all hands to promote it. And the goal was to get as many people as wanted to use this app over the course of 30 days. And if they used it a certain amount of times, let's call it 20 times, they would get a free t-shirt or a free hoodie. And what I would say is never underestimate the power of a free hoodie on human behavior.
I
So
think it used to be, what are those things you put beer cans in?
the koozie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I live in the deep south. Those things are everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. We humans, we love our free stuff. So yeah, we would meet people where they are. Everybody who's people who are like, I don't know what this is. I don't know why we're talking about this. And then we make a bridge for them. And then there's people who, man, I get to do this at work. This is awesome. Let's do it. So the whole spectrum.
I'm loving this conversation. When you talk about compassion, though,
Yes.
one of the things that I've noticed about myself and people around me, we're not too compassionate to ourselves, are we?
Ooh. Oh, yes. It starts there.
Yeah.
It almost always starts there because if we're not in the practice of giving compassion to ourselves, it's hard to do it for others as well. So when I talk about compassion, I have this definition. There's lots of definitions. I like this one. I say that it's the capacity, because our capacity ebbs and flows all the time for three things. The first one is the ability to have awareness of another person. So are we aware? The second one is, do I have a mindset of kindness towards them or wishing them well? And the third thing is the courage to take action. So the self-compassion happens exactly the same way. Do we have capacity first to be aware of ourself? Right? We're often so blinded. We're often so, I guess I'll say the word ignorant to our true nature. And then the second part is, do we have a
Critical.
mindset of kindness?
Right. We're so critical to ourselves. Listen, I've
Yes.
said this on the radio. I'll say it again. If anybody in a Walmart parking lot were to talk to me the way I speak to myself
Mm.
every once in a while, Scott, I would need bail money.
Oh, yeah.
I would be in jail, but I get by with it. So what the heck is that all about?
Oh, okay. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. So, as humans, we evolved with a negativity bias, right? And this kept us alive. We think about what does that mean? Well, first, think about as we evolved in the savannah or wherever it was, and you're sitting around a fire and a stick snaps in the woods, and instantly our bodies we assume the worst, right? We assume that it's a predator.
Yeah,
And
we're
our
in flight
bodies,
mode.
yeah, we
Right.
go into fight, flight, freeze mode. And that's how our bodies respond to almost everything in our, daily awake life. It could be an email, it could be the person in the Walmart parking lot, it could be, the cats bothering you while you're trying to do a podcast, whatever it is. And so our amygdalas, the
Haven't you?
little almond-shaped clusters in our brains, are always looking for what's wrong.
Oh,
They're always looking for what might kill us. And that's the noise in the woods, but it's also the email. It's also, oh, that tuft of hair that we can't get to put down, the bad hair day. It's everything. So we're pre-programmed to see things negatively. So everything about us, everything about the other person, the first instinct, always, the first instinct is an animal instinct, and that animal instinct is always about survival first. Now, how quickly we can move away from that animal instinct to something else is kind of a definition, it's kind of an indication of our evolution. I will say our spiritual evolution, because it's the evolution from fear to love. So compassion always starts with ourselves. Can we move from fear or anger or all the things that come with fear to a space of love? Hmm.
awareness. And
Yes.
we're not always that aware. I remember having a conversation with my best friend. We were driving to Atlanta, Georgia. Don't know why. It's a long drive. It's 10 hours.
Hmm.
And we were talking about compassion. And she made some kind of off remark about how compassionate I am. And my head snipped around. I said, are you trying to ruin my reputation? I don't even know what you're talking about. And she snapped around at me. She said, you don't consider yourself a compassionate person? And I had to stop and think about that. And I said, no, I don't think I do.
Oh,
I
wow.
got my butt chewed out all the way down Peachtree. And you know where
Yeah.
Peachtree is? It's everywhere. So
Well,
it was
actually,
a
in that
long chat.
in that moment, what did you think she meant, and what was it that got your skin all riled up?
I'm a tough girl. I'm tough.
Aha.
Yeah. I'm
Aha.
mean. I think I'm meaner than I really am, apparently, because I do get chewed out for that. Oh, come on, Denise, you're not that mean. Yes, I am. No, you're not. So, so I had to stop and think about that. And I didn't really know what she meant. So she gave me some examples, and then I would counter examples like, you don't remember me yelling at that guy in the restaurant to take his damn phone outside? She goes, yeah, that wasn't too compassionate. I said, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I had to stop and kind of reassess
Yeah.
how I look at myself
Yeah.
and then how other people look at me, and it's completely different. It was kind of scary how off I was.
It's interesting. There's one of my favorite techniques or ways to see a wider spectrum is to ask ourselves what else is true, right? So, I can be driving and I live in California and sometimes going down the 101 when I was in commuting mode. I discovered a law of the universe, which is really interesting, and that is when you are really, really angry, nobody else knows how to drive.
And they're all idiots. Every
Exactly.
one of
They are
them.
all idiots. And so take this moment, I don't know, when you're really angry. Have you ever had an argument with someone who is not actually there? Like you're arguing with them in your mind. And I'm going to guess most people have had this argument.
Yeah.
But when we have this argument, I call it the pothole. We get stuck in the pothole of life. There can be 1,000 miles of perfect road and one pothole. We will fixate on the pothole, whether it's about ourselves or someone else. But the way to help us get out of the pothole is to ask ourselves, all right, what else is true? What else is true? So maybe it's, oh man, I've read too much of the news today, and I start to think that, whatever, we're all headed to hell in a handbasket. But I think, what else is true? All right, well, what else is true is I still love my family. There are birthday parties and weddings and births happening today. Life is good. Life is mostly good, right? And that ability to see the whole picture, that's mindfulness. So for you, for your friend to say, actually, take a look at this. You might be more compassionate than you think. And we tend to focus on our own view, but when we say, well,
Yeah.
what else is true? Oh, it
Yeah.
opens up a broad horizon.
I was offended by that, which is tells you everything
Yes.
you need to know about my wonky personality.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really offended. I was startled. And I said, it's like you don't even know me. When I tell you, we talked all the way through Peachtree, across Peachtree, back down Peachtree. I'm not joking. I hate that street. So I'm never going back. But you're right. I mean, we have self-compassion, and sometimes it's something you really need to work at. You have to,
That's
when you say, is it true? It's like Carolyn Mize, is it true? Is it really true?
yeah.
And once you start asking yourself that, you're like, huh,
Yeah.
well, it's really not.
Yeah.
So moving on.
And this idea that people are offended, and maybe that's even too strong a word, but like they don't understand compassion at work. Like I've had people like, no, I don't want to be compassionate. I want to be a high performer. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, the two things are not mutually exclusive. It, the best leaders, the really best leaders are people who understand their folks, who have some level of empathy, who have some level of compassion, and then start from there. It also doesn't mean soft, right? So as an example, some people think that compassion just means being nice all the time. I remember this time when we were having performance reviews. I don't know if anybody's ever gotten a performance review. It's not the most fun season of life, but we were having performance reviews, and I was the leader of this big team. We were talking with other managers, and we're bringing up this giant spreadsheet of people, and this person had shown up on this list 2 times in a row as a poor performer. And then so we were kind of digging in. It's like, hey, once is fine, but why twice? And the leader, the manager, is like, oh, I didn't really want to have these hard conversations with them because I was trying to be compassionate. Like, oh, okay, we stopped the meeting. Now we're having a different conversation, right? We're having a conversation about this manager being a poor performer because it's our jobs as a leader to help people grow. And that means saying the hard things sometimes too. But you can always say the hard thing from the place of compassion. Just like in our personal lives, there's nothing we can't say as long as we come at it from a position of love. Same thing at work. There's nothing we can't say as long as it comes from a position of compassion.
A- And I've got all kinds of questions. You're going to have to come back. We're not going to make it all the way. You're invited to come back, and you can't tell me no because I said it on the radio. So
All
you have to
right,
come back.
it's a
But
date. Let's do it.
oh, good. But the thing is, when you're talking about being from a position of love, but I have come to learn that if I'm not listening, I can't respond because I have to sit
Mm,
down, shut up, and actually listen. And
mm,
sometimes when you're talking about mindfulness, you can hear a pain point that you never would have sussed out if you
yes,
hadn't sat back and said, well, tell me
that's
what's
right.
going on.
That's right.
And I think that's a big mistake that people, they want to fix it. Let's just go, let's fix it, let's fix it. How
That's
about
right.
if you just listen?
That's right. Listening is so hard in our day today, right? Because we're rewarded by knowing things. Starting in kindergarten, we're rewarded, we get a gold star when we know things. And it's so we pretend that we know everything. But the beautiful part, when we really slow down, when we are curious about life, to say, well, what else is true? What else is true? Beyond, okay, if I have this circle, and that's by definition, my circle is limited, that's what I know. How can I keep expanding the circle? How can I keep learning about other people, about myself? Um, and that's a pathway to mindfulness, it's a pathway to compassion. And it's really hard, this listening thing.
And it's something that I've had to really train myself to do. But I learn more if I just, I will tell myself, Denise, shut up. Listen, just listen. I hear that in my head a lot. Shut up. Okay, okay. Fine. I'm shutting up. But we have to. And then you're right. And then that does lead to intense curiosity,
That's right.
very intense curiosity. Listen, the news right now, I don't watch it. I don't listen to it. I cut off cable in,
Yeah.
oh, geez, 2010, I think it was.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't mean I'm ignorant about what's going on, but I'm
Sure.
very careful about where I get my news. And I don't take the first headline. I'm curious enough to go deeper and deeper, and I use critical thinking skills.
Yes. Yes.
So, there's that. But compassion, and you reminded me of a woman that I used to know. I had a little jewelry store, and she was a block away from me, and bless her. She always came over and brought food. She was a fantastic cook. She was the poorest people. Her and her
Mm,
husband, they were so poor
mm,
because they were compassionate. They
mm.
gave everything. If they got a penny, it went to somebody else. If they had
Wow.
clothing, it went to somebody else. And then people started stealing from her. And I
Oh,
remember looking at her and thinking, your compassion is going to get you starved to death or killed. This is
wow.
not compassion. This
Interesting.
is a mental illness as far as I'm concerned.
Interesting.
I know it
That,
was horrible what happened with her. She was so poor, but she always brought us food. And I would say, listen, let me, this is like a plate lunch. Let me pay you. No, 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 no. So I would start dropping groceries off to her house.
beautiful. It's what you're talking about is really interesting. Um, the writer Adam Grant, who has become super famous now, I first came across his work when he wrote this book, Give and Take, which is, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. He's a Wharton professor that writes on interesting topics about human behavior. And in Give and Take, he creates this spectrum of people at work, because it's a book on work, all the way from selfless giver, like your friend who was cooking and would give away a penny, selfless giver on one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, takers. If there was a pie to negotiate for, the taker would just give it, the taker would take 100% of it, the selfless giver would give away 100% of it.
Right.
And he discovers that in the world of work, takers actually perform better than selfless givers, which, that's kind of a bummer if you are, into humanity. But the interesting thing is he
It
finds,
does.
yeah, yeah, it's a bummer for humanity. He finds a third class of worker that are different, and he calls them otherish, like the opposite of selfish. And otherish people are givers at heart. That's who they are. But they're also looking out for themselves. They're not selfless. So they're solving for the whole. They're not just solving for me. They're not just solving for you. They're solving for we. these are the most successful people. And I would argue they're the most successful people in all forms, even as we're talking about compassion, because we need to take care of ourselves as well to build our capacity to serve. So, otherish.
I just wrote that down. I have to go look that up. Yeah, it's like you hear that old saw, if the plane is going down and those masks drop,
Yeah.
give yourself oxygen first because if you're dead, you can't help the person next to you. And I'm paraphrasing, but I
Yeah,
think that's what it
that's
means.
exactly right. That's exactly right. I think about it as building capacity, right? When we're taking care of ourselves, whether it's our mental well-being, our physical well-being, our spiritual well-being, all the things, we're building our capacity for service. So it's not selfish. Like, look, the rest of us need you to take care of yourself. It's not a selfish thing. Uh,
And, I'm not into anything gender related at all. We have men,
uh-huh.
we have women, we have idiots. So
Uh-huh.
it's not a gender thing. But I find, and I've noticed this all through my life, and I'm guilty of it myself, women in particular, in my observation, tend to take care of everybody first.
Mm. Yeah.
That's not always a good thing. I had to train myself out of that and ask, like you do I need to do this? Is this true?
Yeah.
Stop and take a breath. Am I going to get involved with this at my own risk? Is it going
Yeah.
to take time that I don't have to give? Or is it
Yeah.
just ultimately going to really tick me off?
Yeah. That's
So,
right.
you don't want that to happen. Trust me, you don't want me
We
mad about anything.
we learn about our limitations. And there's this thing like we don't want to believe that we have limitations. Like there's the poster. Oh, there's no limits. All right, well let's talk about our limitations for a second. Like let's take pets. So let's say there's this beautiful kitten, that looks like it's not been taken care of, meowing at your door, and you feed it. And over time, maybe you bring that kitten in, you take care of it, it becomes a beautiful cat. Wonderful. Then there's a second one. Like, okay, well, maybe the first one needs a playmate. All right, I'll take the second one. Well, what about the third one and the fourth one and the 600th one? You know, and most people just don't have space for 600 cats. Or if they're not cats, what if they were blue whales? At some point, we
Yard, that would be
can't.
difficult.
Yeah, at some point, we can't. We have
Right,
limitations.
right.
And it doesn't do anybody any good to pretend that we don't. And so back to these situations where, oh, do I get involved in that? Do I have, you know, and it's hard to sort out. Am I reacting because of habit? Am I reacting because of love? Am I reacting because of fear? Am I reacting because of some strange mental model that my value is based on how much I can serve, regardless of my own well-being? So it goes back to the question, what else is true? What else is true?
What I'm hearing is that we're not sufficiently curious about ourselves.
Hmm, I think that's true.
I mean, we
That
just get
is
up.
true.
My mom used to say, because I'm one of those people, I open my eyes and I hit the floor. That's it. I'm gone. I'm out. And, I don't need coffee. My sister would not stay in a hotel room with me because she said I was obnoxious. She was not a morning person. But my mom used to say, I would hit the floor running and the devil would say, oh crap, she's awake. It's true. She sent me a birthday card. I was like, thanks, mom. But I had to stop, really stop in the mornings before I just jump out of bed and go tackle what, 150 things I need to tackle,
Sure.
to deliberately stay in bed, to look at my notes, what did my subconscious deliver me at 3:18, and express my gratitude, say my prayers. I talk to my ceiling fan a lot out loud because I'm looking up at the ceiling fan and I'm expressing enormous gratitude. And if I
Hmm.
don't do, and mostly I'm kind of hurrying because there's a cat on my bladder. But if I don't do that, my day just goes wonky.
Yeah,
From I don't even make it to the kitchen, and I'm already going, what the heck? So,
exactly.
you
This
have
is,
to be curious and you have to be aware.
yes. Gratitude. I'd love to talk about gratitude for a bit. I think gratitude is a superpower. And hmm, it kind of gets glossed over. Like, yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. I'll think about what I'm grateful for. Like, no, 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 really. Like, this is a secret of life. Because what we're doing is we're moving from fear, we're moving from the amygdala of our bodies, of our evolutionary training, to one of love. This is really what's going on. We're moving from fear to love. We're moving from human to divine when we're thinking about gratitude. And okay, it's easy to be grateful for the sunshine or my kids or the things that are great in life. But when we can really get curious and be grateful for every moment of the day, including the ones that are not fun at all, this is actually a secret. It's this, I call it black belt level gratitude. But you take that really hard thing, that person that whatever you had the altercation with in the Walmart parking lot. I'm making stuff up. You started the Walmart parking lot discussion.
Go
But
there.
let's see.
Actually, they deliver my groceries, but still.
Yeah, they're great. They're great. Okay. But we have some interaction that doesn't go well. And of course it sends us spinning. But what if we stopped as soon as possible, whether it's 2 hours later or 1 second later, and got curious and go, huh, what's the gift? Right? What if I approached life as if this altercation with the moron in the parking lot was a gift just for me? Like, okay, well, why? What did I learn from that? What's my opportunity to grow? What's my opportunity to live love at a deeper level here? And sometimes that takes a really long time to unwind. But this is one of the secrets to life. This is one of the secrets to happiness, is just to stop and be grateful for every single moment.
I had a guest, and I've told this story before. So if you've heard this podcast, you've already heard this. But I had a guest probably 10 years ago or better. And he came on the show. He wanted to talk about gratitude. And I said, okay. I didn't know much about it at the time. So maybe it was longer. But he had a death sentence imposed on him. He had cancer. It was a
Oh,
bad, bad cancer. And it was one of those where the doctor says, we can't help you. Go home and get your affairs in order. Good luck and God bless.
right.
So he didn't take that. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. So he embarked. He did have the surgery. I think he said, no, you're not going to poison me with radiation. I would do the same. If you can cut it out, good. But the rest of it, no, just I'll get my affairs in order. But that's a personal thing. But he embarked on what he called enormous gratitude. And
Mm,
he spent not contemplation, not, meditation. He was just grateful for every breath he took, for every sip of water he had. I'm
uh-huh.
grateful for water. I love water. But
Uh,
I think he said that within about 9 months, he was cancer free.
wow.
Yeah. He
There
just
you
said,
go.
no, nope, you're not, no. You're a doctor and I know you know what you're talking about, but you're not going to give me a death sentence. Immense gratitude. And I learned so much from that conversation with him. I went, huh, okay, Denise, get busy. And I've been busy ever since.
There's always perspective, right? Because if whatever we're complaining about, you could look at someone else and say, well, they have it worse, right? A cancer death sentence of people that live literally
Right,
in a war zone.
right,
I think about if I'm having an argument with one of my uh, my children, or I see somebody else having an argument with one of their children. This can be really traumatic. It's really a lot. But I think about my friend who lost his son when the son was 20 in a car accident. And I think my friend anything, would give anything to have this argument right now. So we can be grateful for every moment if we choose to see it that
yes.
way. And it's a choice.
It
It's a hard choice.
I'm
It's
glad you said that. It is a choice and it's an awareness of the choice. You have to be aware of it, that it's an option for you. I
yeah.
mean, listen, when you're 17, 18, 19, 20 until you're 40, you're ignorant as all get out. We really, people say, oh, I'm an adult. No, no, you're not. Go sit down and let your brains, keep forming because you've got some time in there. But it took me the longest kind of time to realize that I was really ignorant about myself. I had no
Mm,
idea who I was.
mm.
None. And I may not yet, but I think I'm better.
Yeah, I don't think there's a finish line where we throw up our hands and say,
Hope
okay,
not.
we're cooked, we're done, we finished. I think every time we do that, it's just, oh, it's the beginning of another one. I, I got
Thing.
another race to go. Yeah.
More coming back. So all these questions that I so carefully wrote down, I'll share them with you the next time you come on. But
Okay.
I don't want to get away from what we're talking about, mindfulness and compassion and contemplation and meditation. Listen, I was convinced for the longest kind of time that I cannot meditate. Then I
Mm.
realized, and I can't sit still and go, I just can't. My brain just goes, oh, I need to write my Thanksgiving list. And the list never changes from year to year. It's
Oh.
embedded in my head, but I start writing it anyway.
Uh-huh.
But I realize when I'm walking my dog and it's late at night, even in the rain, I've been known to just walk past my house twice until the dog says, hey, my feet hurt. Can we? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I snap back into, the living.
Sure.
But walking meditation works for me.
Mm. That's a good point. There are meditations or forms of practice for everyone. One of the things we have all these apps, and the apps are not for everybody, but they cover a wide spectrum. So I like Insight Timer right now. In fact, I'm a teacher on Insight Timer. If you want to come meditate with me, I do live sessions there. But Insight Timer has over 20,000 teachers with so many different types of practices, everything from the spiritual to the secular, everything. Well, if somebody's thought about it and they can lead it on an app, it's there. So I always encourage people like find what works for you.
Right.
Actually, there's science behind this. You know what the most powerful type of practice that you can do is? Everybody should write this down. The single most powerful type of practice
Breathing.
is the one you'll actually do.
Is it breathing? Because
No,
I
it's
like
it's
that one.
it's the one you'll actually do. Meaning, if you do it and you like it, it's going to work. And so, in
Okay.
other words, I tell people, look, our path to whatever the end we think is, or whatever enlightenment, whatever word you want to call it, is an individual path. No two paths are the same. My path is not your path. Your path is not my path. So find what works for you. And yes, breathing is awesome.
Breathing. Yes. I will often go outside. Yeah, I live in the deep south and it's quiet here. My little one, until they started knocking down the crops and building houses, it was 3 streets deep, 3 streets wide.
Mm.
And I often will go outside and barefoot in the mud. Doesn't matter to me.
Mm.
We're in the mud season right now. We
Yeah.
have 2 seasons, hot and hotter in hell. Right now we're in the mud season. I'll go outside and just dig my feet into the dirt or the mud or the grass, whatever happens to be thriving out there, and just breathe.
Yeah.
Just think, ground myself.
This is a pathway. So my friend Dacher Keltner wrote this book about awe, pathways to awe. And Dacher is a scientist. So he's talking about awe and in a scientific terms. I'm a spiritual guy. So when I hear the word awe, I think I hear the word God or divine or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, he has 8 pathways to awe that he's researched. And one of them is nature. So, in other words, a pathway to the divine. And here's why I think it works. I think it works because when we're in nature, we're connected to something that is bigger than ourselves, much bigger than ourselves. One of the things he and his research team did is he said, draw a self-portrait. And people will draw themselves really big on the paper, and then he asked them, I forget if they're out in nature or to do a visualization where they're out in nature, and then, draw a self-portrait. And they draw this big scene with a tiny little stick figure in the corner that is them. Well, what's happening? We're moving away from thinking that we are literally the center of the world, the center of the universe, and it's all ego, to thinking like, oh, I'm part of something much, much bigger. And that is a pathway to awe.
40. You're not going to know that, but maybe down the road you might. It took me a lot longer than it should have, let me tell you that.
Yeah.
I was the most important person in the world. That's all there was to it. Okay, so I was obnoxious. I suspect I was a lot more obnoxious than I think I was. I don't I don't try to go back and look anymore, but what what transformation effects when you're talking with people, in I'm going to go find that app. Insight,
Insight
you know,
timer.
yeah, I'm going to go find that. When
Yeah.
you're talking with people, whether you're in on a stage or in your book, and you're talking with people, what kind of transformative effects have you witnessed where people have
Mm.
said, hmm, mindfulness and compassion? Oh,
I had,
that's interesting.
yeah, for sure. I had a young woman reach out during COVID times, right? So remember when everything was shut down right in the beginning, and she was a young mom. She had two little kids at home, and in that moment, she was daycare because daycare was closed. She was a saleswoman. She had a big number, a big target to reach. She was married. She was a partner. And we had this conversation where she said, I'm reaching out to say thank you for the programs that you're offering because I'm screaming at my kids a lot less, and we both laughed. But it's that laugh that I knew she was kidding, but not kidding. Because I've been there. She's been there. We've all been there. And she went on to say, yeah, look, I'm a better mom. I'm a better partner. I'm better with me. I'm a better version of myself. I'm better at work. I'm just I'm just such a better version of myself. Thank you. And sometimes these changes happen bit by bit. Sometimes lightning strikes, but that's not usually how it works. One of my favorite quotes is Rumi, who, if y'all don't know Rumi and Hafiz were these two Persian poets from 600 or 700 years ago, whose words ring true today. He said, "If you don't like the rub, how will you ever become polished? Like a clear mirror."
Right.
And I
Or a
think that's like,
diamond.
or a diamond.
Right.
And this is how it happens. It happens a little, a little, a little at a time. And then we look up one day and it's like, oh, wow, I feel much more clear. I'm shining brightly. I feel better. I'm a better version of myself.
Went to the statue David. That
Hmm.
was a block. It started as a block. It just got chipped away, chipped away until David was out there shining.
Yeah, that's right. I love the story of David because, and I may not get it right for you, true art historians, but I think two other artists, two other sculptors had tried on that same block of stone that had been chosen, and it was, they decided it couldn't be done because the rock was not great. It was too hard, you know. And David was a young punk. I forget how, or sorry, Michelangelo was a young punk. I forget how
Michelangelo,
old he
yeah.
was.
Yeah.
He was 19 or 20 or whatever, and this is what he did. He made it happen. So this is like our life.
Yeah.
Yeah, life is hard. There are people that think it can't be done. You can't be compassionate at work. You can't be compassionate in this time of division. The truth is, of course you can. Of course you can. And when you do it, it will be so beautiful in a way that we can't even imagine.
Just wrote this down because, like I said, I take a lot of notes when you're talking, but I'm, are you seeing where people are going, huh? So it doesn't make me look weak. It doesn't make me look like I'm a weenie titty whiny baby. I live in the South. We say these things. You know, are people at the top levels? I'm sure they are because you've been doing this for a while, saying,
Mm.
huh, I'm not weak. I'm actually
Yeah.
much stronger.
Yes, I would say it's a spectrum. Of course. Of course, you have leaders, and you'll continue to have leaders always who will be jackasses or whatever you want to call them.
We say that in the South too.
And then you'll have leaders who get it, who say, oh, actually, the most powerful version of myself is the one who has this grace, who has this compassion, who has this ability to center myself. Yeah. And of course, it's the whole spectrum. And so, again, my job is not to rail against the darkness. It's not to rail against the people who get it wrong, but it's to be farmers of the light. It's to find the people who have a spark and to help them grow that spark, to help them build that spark so that they can light other people up.
I'm not even sure how to phrase this. Do you, when you started this and you're still working on this, so this is not something
Hmm.
that just kind of came and went, you're still working at this and, different levels.
Hmm.
Do you ever reach people that are just like, no, I'm going to be the guy in the corner office who says, do what you're told and nobody gets hurt?
They don't say it directly to me, but I'm
Right.
100% sure that there's people who hear what I have to say and then just turn around.
Yeah, I was afraid of
But
that. But
but here's the thing. But I can't worry about that. I did this job 2 or 3 years ago. It was at a sales conference for executives from the specific company. So there's maybe, I don't know, 180 people who were directors to senior VPs. So it's very senior salespeople. And I went to the meet and greet the night before. It's at Disney World, whatever the one is in Orlando. And I'm hanging out with all these people I don't know. They're all in button-down shirts and blue blazers. Almost all of them are senior white dudes, older than me. And I was thinking, oh man, I don't know if my stuff's gonna play with these guys. I had this impression of them, right? It's like here's these hardcore East Coast, older gentlemen. Because I had the keynote. I had, 45 minutes of talking about mindfulness and compassion, and I had a workshop in the afternoon that was another 90 minutes. So they were going to get a bunch of time with me. And I was thinking, do I need to modify? Do I need to like tone it down? And somewhere along the line, I thought, all right, nope, I'm going to do it. And so I did it. And it even included doing a 3-minute meditation during my keynote for 180 people who were captive to it. And it seemed to go well. They were engaged in the workshop. They were engaged. And later, after it's all done, at the end of the day, we're on the bus to go somewhere else for dinner. I don't know anybody. I'm sitting on the bus. This guy sits down next to me, and he knows me because he's seen me. I don't know him. And he nods his head. He goes, "All right, you got me." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "When they first introduced you and said what you're going to talk about, I thought to myself, this is going to be such a load of, that thing." And
yeah,
he goes, "But I listened to your stories and it made sense. And then I went to your workshop and it made even more sense." He goes, "I gotta tell you, brother, I'm all in. I'm all in." And I thought, well, if you're the only one, then this trip was worth it. But I'm sure that
right,
you're not the only one. So thank
right.
you. Thank you for saying that.
And those are the moments when you go, okay, I'm doing what I need to be doing.
Exactly.
Interesting. Scott, before I let you go, I wanted to go back to the book very quickly because you are coming back and we will
All
be
right.
talking. You are. I was in order. And you will be sharing or we'll be talking more about the book, The Full Body Yes, Change Your Work and Your World from the Inside Out. You have, and I want the audience to know this and get the book before we get back on this show. You have where's my notes? You have won some awards with this, haven't you?
Yeah, that
Let's
was
talk about
fun.
that. Yeah.
I won a Nautilus Book Award. And so I asked, my publisher reached out and said, "Hey, you won this award." I'm like, because I'm a little bit of a skeptic on these things. I'm like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 being the Pulitzer Prize and one being, everybody who applies for it gets the award, where does this award stand up? And they're like, "Oh, it's like an 8." I'm like, okay, I'll take that. That's pretty good. So it's a
Nice.
it's a real award.
And it's a real book. It's a
Yeah.
good book. Like I said in the beginning, I have read it. I've read it twice. What happens when these books land, I have to tell the audiences, I love to interview people who are authors. I'm
Mm,
a reader. Don't give me a TV remote. I'm probably not going to know how to operate it, but I've got hundreds of books in this room. Every single book in this room, without exception, was gifted to me by people like you, my guests.
mm,
And
mm.
I read them. I actually do read them. I'll read the back of a cereal box if that's all that's available, and I don't eat cereal. So I do read these books. But what happens is when it lands, I'll glance through it because it may be, a month, 6 weeks before we're going to actually get me on the show. And I want it to be fresh. So I glance at it, I sticky note a few places, and I put it on this one particular shelf where the authors are waiting. then the weekend before I get on the show with you, I sit down and I read it from cover to
Mm.
cover. I'm a speed reader on top of being an idiot, but
Mm.
there's that. And that's when the sticky notes really come out to play. And that's when I'm like, okay, I love this book. And I
Mm.
really do. But you're
Thank
speaking
you.
my language. In so many ways, you're speaking my language. None of this was really a shock to me
Mm.
because I was like, okay, he gets it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you so
audience,
much.
go
Those
get
are
the
kind
book.
words.
Seriously, go get the book.
And if you do read the book, please reach out to me. I make the request every time I speak, every time I hand somebody a book. I'm like, if you actually read it, let me know what your favorite story was. So I'll set that challenge for your listeners. Reach out to me, Scott@scottshute.com. There's my
Uh,
email address.
my pink notes in here are the ones where I'm like, oh, I need to go back to that. So I've
Mm.
got several pink notes in there, and I'll share one of them with you the next time we talk.
All right.
Listen, Scott, thank you so much for sharing your truly inspiring journey and your insights with us. And I really am grateful that you're willing to come back. So before we close, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience? And where can people connect with you? And when I go to the app, how can I find you?
Oh, okay. Several things. So if you want to meditate with me, go to Insight Timer. It's an app, and you just look for me. Look for Scott Shute. You can follow me there. I do live sessions about every week or two, usually Fridays at 8 o'clock Pacific. I also have some recorded things there. The best place, if you can't find anything, come to my website at scottshute.com. Sign up for my newsletter. Reach out to me directly, Scott@scottshute.com. If you want to do things at your workplace, I promise it will be awesome. I promise it will be awesome. Um, yeah, that's enough. Well, actually, one more thing. If you want to join us, we're creating a movement of people who care about conscious business. And that movement you can find at changingwork.org. So changingwork.org. So many ways that we can be friends and colleagues and help change work and the world from the inside out together.
Morning. So I'll ask you about that the next time we chat. Well, listen
Beautiful.
to our audience as we wrap up today's truly enlightening conversation with Scott Shute, Shute, by the way. We hope that you've gained valuable insights into the transformative power of mindfulness and compassion in the workplace and at home. And his journey from a tech executive to a champion of conscious business practices is not only inspiring, but it's also a call to action for all of us, honestly, to rethink our approach to work and well-being. So please take a moment to connect with Scott online and let him know you found him here. And if you found today's conversation helpful and inspiring, and I hope you did, we would greatly appreciate your support. And by support, I mean please go over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review and mention Scott. Your feedback not only helps us improve the show, but it also allows me to reach more listeners like you. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next week. Scott, thank you. I have thoroughly enjoyed your company today.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a
My
beautiful day.
pleasure. Thank you.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.